Welcome to this explainer. For over 2 years now, the story of what exactly went down at OpenAI back in November 2023 has been so neatly packaged by corporate PR. We were all sold this narrative of a board that overreached, a workforce that rebelled, and a CEO who triumphantly returned. Simple, right? Well, not exactly. Because right now, inside a federal courthouse in Oakland, a completely different story is actively being assembled under oath. So today, we're going to strip away all that PR spin. We're going to dive right into the actual trial record to uncover the shocking truths behind what was literally the most chaotic week in Silicon Valley history. And considering this is the company building the AI that's likely going to shape all of our futures, understanding who is really in control, that is absolutely crucial. So let's dive in.
Now, what's honestly fascinating to discover right off the bat is the sheer contrast between the public narrative and the legal reality. On one side, we had this flimsy 4-sentence press release put out by the OpenAI board on November 17th. It vaguely claims Sam Altman was not consistently candid, but it offered zero specifics, literally no examples. But the courtroom reality? It turns out this whole thing was triggered by an explosive 52-page sworn dossier that had been compiled over months. So what the world saw was 4 carefully curated sentences, but what the board actually had in their hands was 52 pages of hard, documented evidence.
All right, let's get into part 1, the build-up. Essentially, a ticking time bomb. To really grasp how this explosion happened, we have to recognize that the firing wasn't just some sudden, impulsive decision. It was a bomb that had been carefully assembled over several years. And to see where the fuse was actually lit, we have to look at their completely bizarre corporate structure. See, OpenAI was founded back in 2015 as a non-profit charity, and its design was specifically to protect humanity from artificial general intelligence. But then, in 2019, Altman, Greg Brockman, and Ilya Sutskever created OpenAI LP. This was a capped-profit commercial engine nested entirely inside that nonprofit charity. So the nonprofit board kept total governance control, but this new commercial engine was suddenly revving up.
And you simply cannot stuff a massive commercial enterprise inside a charity without causing some serious friction. Just look at how these Microsoft investments escalated over time. It started with $1 billion in 2019. Then $2 billion in 2021, and a massive $10 billion by 2023. This perfectly shows how that financial commercial engine began completely overwhelming the original nonprofit mission. It's like putting a rocket engine on a bicycle.
So as you might expect, as the money grew, so did the internal divisions. Board members, particularly Ilya Sutskever, were getting incredibly uncomfortable with the direction Sam Altman was taking things. Altman was constantly traveling the globe, trying to raise billions from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds to build a new AI chip company. On top of that, he was pushing controversial new consumer tools at Dev Day, essentially allowing anyone to build their own ChatGPT. For the board, the company was just moving way too fast, and those nonprofit guardrails, they were totally failing.
But the tensions weren't just strategic, right? They were getting incredibly personal. Former board member Helen Toner actually testified that in October 2023, 2 executives came forward privately. And they brought receipts. They had screenshots and documentation of mistruths. Toner stated they used the phrase psychological abuse to describe the toxic atmosphere. And we actually know from the trial now that one of those executives providing screenshots was Chief Technology Officer Mira Murati.
So facing all of this, the board asks Ilya Sutskever to start compiling everything. And he puts together this massive 52-page document. It included everything from safety concerns to wild instances where the board wasn't even told about the launch of ChatGPT until they literally saw it on Twitter. During the trial, Sutskever was asked under oath what action he believed was appropriate based on that 52-page dossier he made. His answer was just one single word: termination.
Which brings us to part 2, the firing. And man, there was absolutely no advance warning here.
After a whole year of quiet documentation, the climax arrived incredibly abruptly. Friday, November 17th, 2023. Boom! The board pulls the trigger. They oust Sam Altman with absolutely zero advanced warning to their massive partner Microsoft or even to their own employees. Co-founder Greg Brockman literally finds out moments before the public announcement goes live, and he resigns immediately. Just like that, the entire company is thrown into instant chaos.
Moving right along to part 3, the secret merger, specifically the Anthropic proposal.
Now here is an absolute bombshell revelation from the trial that takes us way deeper into the reality of what was happening behind the scenes. Just 24 hours after the firing,
a proposal is floated for OpenAI to merge with its fierce rival Anthropic. And the kicker? With Anthropic's leadership taking control. I mean, talk about dramatic irony. Anthropic was literally founded by a group of former OpenAI researchers who had fled the company years earlier because they had major concerns over safety and corporate direction. So the OpenAI board fired Altman over safety, and within 24 hours, they were exploring the idea of asking the exact same people who fled over safety to come back and take over. Sutskever vehemently opposed this merger, but he testified that the rest of the board was largely supportive. Ultimately, it just collapsed due to practical obstacles.
All right, on to part 4, the reinstatement. Get ready for some compressed chaos.
With the merger dead in the water, the next 4 days turn into the most compressed chaos in Silicon Valley history. Let's just rapidly tick through this whiplash. Saturday, the Anthropic merger collapses, and the board rejects Altman's initial return terms. Sunday, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella drops an absolute bomb, announcing he's hired Altman and Brockman to lead a brand new AI team over at Microsoft. Monday, total internal revolt breaks out at OpenAI. And finally, Tuesday, a late-night deal is struck. Altman returns as CEO, and the board that fired him is entirely dissolved and replaced. Just a wild roller coaster.
So, what actually forced that Tuesday return deal? Well, it boils down to one number: 700. Over 700 OpenAI employees, which was the overwhelming majority of the company at the time, signed an open letter. They essentially threatened to walk out and join Microsoft unless the board resigned and reinstated Altman immediately. You know, investor pressure is one thing, but losing your entire engineering workforce overnight, that was a fatal blow to the board's power. And right smack in the middle of that employee revolt is honestly the most stunning reversal of the whole saga. Ilya Sutskever, the guy who spent months compiling the 52-page termination dossier, the very man who pulled the trigger, actually signs the letter demanding Altman's to turn. He publicly posts, "I deeply regret my participation in the board's actions." Going from orchestrating a firing to demanding a reinstatement in just 3 days. It's just wild. This is really the emotional human core of this entire unbelievable story.
Finally, part 5, the fallout. Let's look at the actual structural consequences of all this. Okay, let's take a breath and slow things down a bit. The dust is settled, the original board is gone, and a new WilmerHale investigation clears Altman in a summary finding. But what are the really profound structural consequences of those 5 days? Well, the most glaring one is the total collapse of OpenAI's original identity. That entire government structure of the nonprofit board was specifically designed from day one to protect the company's mission from commercial pressure. Yet it collapsed under the exact same commercial pressure it was meant to resist. The moment they faced 700 employees threatening to leave and multi-billion-dollar investor blowback, those nonprofit guardrails just instantly shattered.
So, neutrally speaking, where do all the key players stand today? Well, Greg Brockman returned alongside Altman, and his stake, which he accumulated on a $0 investment, is now worth about $30 billion. Ilya Sutskever apologized, stepped down, and formally left OpenAI in May 2024. He went on to found a new company, Safe Superintelligence, and walked away with a $7 billion stake in OpenAI's for-profit arm. He really remains the most conflicted, fascinating figure in this entire saga.
And what about the company itself? Today, OpenAI is actively targeting a Q4 2026 IPO with a truly staggering valuation of $852 billion. That nonprofit structure is officially being converted into a for-profit. So when you look at the dust settling, it becomes glaringly obvious who won the corporate war. The board that tried to prevent this hyper-commercialization was entirely replaced by one that is now guiding the AI we all use every single day toward one of the largest IPOs in history.
But here's the kicker. This story isn't just past history. It is actively being weighed in a federal courtroom right now. Sam Altman takes the stand on Tuesday to answer under oath for that 52-page dossier, for Mir Marati's screenshots, and for that entire chaotic sequence of events. Closing arguments are this Thursday. Now, the public relations battle, that was won a long time ago. But as those 12 jurors in Oakland look at the actual sworn evidence, the ultimate question remains. When you strip all that corporate spin away, who will the jury believe?